The Tights and Fights podcast for over 6 years, a revolutionary force in sports and entertainment.
Here comes the hound. Here comes the Danielle. Here comes the Lindsay. They are the panel. They've got a podcast. Tights and Fights is the name.
Welcome to Tights and Fights, the show that discusses wrestling with the sincerity and hilarity that it deserves. I'm the Talk and Roll Express, Hal Lublin, and I'm joined today by my fellow member of the Nation of Conversation, Road Warrior Danielle, Danielle Radford.
Oh man, what's that noise that Road Warrior used to make?
Bleh.
It sounds like I'm puking.
Yeah.
I get
She's gonna puke.
Oh no, it's just the sound of me falling over and bumping. But we'll just say that that's Road Warrior animal noises. Just me bumping.
It's Danielle going bump in the night. But Danielle and I are not the only ones here. Friends, we're about to welcome back a special guest to the show. She is the host of the podcast, The JV Club with Janet Varney, and is known for her roles across television and animation, and as a fellow Work Juice player along with me. It's Fists of Granite, Janet Varney. Welcome back.
Why has no one introduced me that way before? Of course I'm Fists of Granite. Of course I am.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that.
You're always punching people and things everywhere you go.
No, I love punching things. I'm known as a puncher.
See, I thought that your fists were full of granite and you had pica.
Let me tell you a quick story. My mom had friends when I was little who's were like geologists, and they named all of their children G names that were also gems or minerals. So they had like granite, galena, garnet, and then my mom said they can't ever have another kid or they'll have to name him gravel. And I was like, yeah, that is what they would have to name him. Good call, Mom.
They are the crystal gems. Very nice.
Yeah. Granite fists, fists of granite. Fists of Granite, Janet. That's me. I'm so happy to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always our pleasure. We did
Yes,
have you
please.
for another episode, Janet, that all MaxFun member. We had another episode with you, Janet, that all MaxFun members can go listen to in our bonus feeds right now before we get going. So we'll wait. It's really great, and we're sure everyone will love it. And welcome back.
They loved it.
Remind us a little bit of how limited your wrestling experience has been in childhood.
Childhood, next to nothing. Definitely understood wrestling through the lens of which wrestlers left wrestling to become movie stars. That's sort of still mainly true, but I really enjoyed our deep dive into Cesaro and his entrance music. Julian introduced me to Colt Cabana, and I had one of my most favorite Boys of Summer episodes with him. What an absolute gem. And he came up and said hi to me at a con that we were both at, and I feel like I really played up the fact to like anybody who was waiting to meet me. I like really played up that he had come over and that I was like, oh, my friend Colt Cabana, my personal friend. I felt very cool. And then I also got to meet Mick Foley recently, and he had done a voice on Avatar: The Last Airbender, the series. And so I like tried to parlay that into him thinking I was super cool. And I don't think I succeeded. I feel like he was like, and here's another person who wants to meet me. Yes, goodbye. I will be meeting other people now.
Who
But
am
I
making
tried.
this out to?
Exactly. I tried. I really tried.
Well, let's talk a little bit about wrestling news. WWE's biggest figure, Vince McMahon, who is slowly turning into a Broderick Crawford villain, has been ousted and has eventually returned. Then he had back surgery. WrestleMania happened in Inglewood, and now WWE's merger with UFC under the name TKO has been finalized. Ari Emanuel will be the CEO of all of that. How much of that did you notice? Were you there for any? Have you seen Vince McMahon's mustache? Like that's surely that's made the rounds to your orbit somehow, right, Janet?
Have I seen that mustache? I'm still stuck at just knowing that Ari Emanuel is in charge of everything. But have I seen the mustache? I don't know if I have. I got to take a look. I'm going to look it up right now while you keep talking.
Yeah, take a look. Well, take a look. I want to see your live reaction to it.
I was going to say, am I in trouble if I'm on a smaller computer than usual? Will the mustache like spill over into real life if I look
You'll
it
see
up?
You'll see
Am I-
it immediately.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, when you have a thing of glory to be proud of forever, I guess you got to go for it.
By the way, when they rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange, which I believe was yesterday,
Mhm.
he was standing next to his son, who is I think in his early 50s and has graying hair. So he's standing next to him like a living bottle of Just for Men next to his son, who's just naturally graying, and it is the weirdest
Oh,
thing.
no.
Like,
Yeah.
like I'm getting away with it. Look at me, I'm getting away with it.
I'm
It's so
getting away
perfect.
with it.
You just know he thinks he looks like Errol Flynn. Like you just know he does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be what you were modeling yourself after, I guess.
Yeah, that's so bad. This merger is weird. I mean, it makes sense. It's going to be a very valuable company. It's a good business move. The CFO of WWE has left. I don't think it was because he was in protest of the merger. I think he got like a $5 million bonus plus whatever he had in invested shares that would have triggered when the acquisition happened. Maybe that is the $5 million bonus. Either way, he's walking away with plenty of money to live on a beach or do whatever he wants next. But the question becomes for wrestling fans, how this is going to affect the creative moving forward. Is there going to be somebody else with their hands all over it? Vince McMahon, who had ostensibly left the company, has been calling in changes. Like, he doesn't show up at the shows, but he gives them changes over the phone or over the computer. So the shows are constantly shifting, and you know what it's like to have last minute changes made right before a show. And that's constantly happening in the world of professional wrestling. So it may be nothing. It may be nothing that's going to happen that is any different, but I don't know. I feel uneasy. How do you feel, Danielle?
Oh, me? Well, so I mean, obviously we're not going to know what's going to happen. Vince was out because he did all of the things you're not supposed to do as a person who runs a company. And people were like, this is bad. And even though we knew about it for years, we're going to pretend we care now and make it so that you are no longer around. And then it became like, well, I have to come back because the only way Endeavor will negotiate to do this thing. That's my Vince. I just pursed my lips. The only way Endeavor will come back to do this thing is if I help negotiate, blah, 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 blah. And part of it was that he was negotiating for creative control. I am going to take it with a grain of salt because he is on the board for all of it. Whereas like he has people who are on the board who are dedicated just to WWE. In my heart of hearts, I think that he knows he can trust the people who have WWE to still listen to him. But Vince has always been the dude who's like, I want whatever's above. And he always, like, even as he is this mythic figure who brought wrestling into the era that it is now, he never liked it. He's not a wrestling fan. Like that was never his thing. Like his thing was always he wanted to make a show. Like he's Hugh Jackman in The Greatest Showman. Like that's who he is. And so now that he has this, and just knowing Vince and like his level of ego and vibrato, it's got to feel really good that he can boss around these dudes who actually hit people in the face for a living and not just like, because like for me, one of the big stories that came out that was during like a press conference that Dana White kind of like laughed about was someone was like, hey, like, you know, one of the guys at Endeavor said that this is great and then this is an opportunity to make WWE fans into UFC fans and vice versa. And Dana White was like, no, it's not, because they're different things, which Dana White was clearly biting his tongue to not be like, their shit is fake, because that's like what UFC fans like. They do not like the idea that someone thinks UFC is fake or equates it with wrestling. So I like what works is that it's like these two sides of the opposite coin. And so whereas I do think that there's going to be some bleed when you have essentially like the production people for WWE or like the Imagineers, like I think that there'll be some bleed over where they at least use some of their expertise to make the UFC shows bigger. I think what's more likely to happen is that you're going to get Vince fucking up UFC before you get him fucking up WWE. Because it's a new territory for him to fuck up.
Mhm.
You know? Where no McMahon has gone before. He's already made like his mark on the wrestling world. Now he wants to put his mark in like UFC and all of these other. There's a reason why he's always trying to go after these, like, it's like real sports, but not like this, and like XFL and all that stuff. Like, he wants his legacy to be in something that is more respected than wrestling. For whatever, I think that's a bummer, because I think wrestling is great and it's its own thing. But like, I fully believe that he's like, yeah, I got to tell Colin McGregor what to do. You know, I fully believe that that's who he'd want to be. I me and Dana White are at the same level. Okay, Vince, whatever, man. You're old. Go sit down.
Here's a fun thing about...
and go sit down in your throne made of just for men.
Yeah. Here's the really interesting thing about, like, wrestling's great. Love wrestling. Love all the drama. I think the more I think about it, I feel like I think about it more and more with each passing day. Maybe because my mind is slipping, but Vince McMahon, his father, Vince McMahon Sr., was the owner of WWF/WWF before Vince bought it from him. He was not raised by Vince McMahon Sr. Vince McMahon Sr., Vince was born out of wedlock, I believe, or like, basically he was abandoned by his father. He was raised in North Carolina. He really wanted a relationship with his dad, which I think started when he was 16. And I believe that everything he has done, everything he has ever done, has been to try to earn his father's love. And I believe his father passed away before he like took wrestling national, which would have been, which was, I mean, as weird a figure as he is, modern wrestling being able to have not one but two, arguably three national wrestling shows, that wouldn't happen without him. He was the one who originated all that. He figured it out and promoted it and made it huge and made it mainstream acceptable. Changed with the times, sometimes not fast enough, but was able to adapt and evolve. And I feel like every single bit of it is for his dad to say, "Son, I'm proud of you," and he'll never hear that. He'll never hear that.
Yeah. Well, Shane will never hear it either. So at least he gets to like live generational trauma on both ends, because his own son's never going to hear it either. That's why he's always throwing himself off of stuff.
It troubles me that neither of you believes in seances like I do. I think he will hear his dad say that.
You don't think he has to write candles?
Any medium now, he's going to get that connection straight through to Pop, and he's going to hear what he needs to hear through the sounds of cheesecloth coming out of a medium's mouth.
Did either of you ever do a Ouija board?
Yeah, I sure did.
It was real.
I sure did. Yeah.
I was
a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. I was convinced my freshman year of college that I had a experience that was real. And I was like in tears afterwards. And I called my parents. I was like, "Who is this person?" Oh. And it was like the name of somebody who was related to me that I've never heard of before. Like, there was no way anyone could have known. But also, I don't know that is. I don't believe.
Wait a minute. You're starting to convince me.
For like 2 days, I was like, I am a believer.
So you're saying you don't believe in it? Because I'm going to take away your California driver's license.
Yeah, it's a real ID. You can't take it now. You can't take it tattooed on you.
Number one reason they get taken away. Number one reason they get taken away.
Right at customs.
Do you believe in Ouija boards? That's more important than this road
I'll
test.
have that. Zing.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how wooey are you?
Yeah.
Do you have any crystals on your person? And if not, would you like some?
I'm not trying hard enough. I know that.
Ma'am, how many bundles of sage are in your trunk right now? Well, Janet, the biggest thing we wanted to have you here to discuss today, outside of Ouija boards and seances and Vince McMahon's weird mustache and father issues, is to talk about a wrestler known as Daniel Bryan in WWE, but his actual name, get ready, is Bryan Danielson, which is what he wrestles under now in AEW and everywhere else in the world. You've watched some footage
I did.
Daniel Bryan?
I did. And as you were about to ask me if I did, I was busy puzzling through what he'll change his name to next. I was trying to think of a new combination of like Dan Bry Danielson. We'll see. We'll see. He could swap it again. You don't know.
For
You
sure.
don't know.
Put an eye patch
Got to
on it,
think
someone
outside the
knows.
box. Don't just flip them. You know what I mean? You can mix and match. You could do a real mix and match.
You have so many choices.
Yeah.
Blue sky thinking. Blue sky
Yeah,
thinking.
absolutely. No, this is a really great story. Obviously, all of it's real. He, is started out as seemingly an underdog. A small, maybe on the smaller side. Really had to like go up against the machine, had to go up against that same system that you've just been talking about, Hal. Really had to fight his way up, and then to my understanding was forced into retirement, not because people just didn't want him there anymore, which is what I thought when I first saw that he had been forced into retirement. I was like, whoa, they really forced him into retirement. But that was not the case. The case was he was getting, as I think he put it, one too many concussions. But then just when everyone had counted him out, there he comes back. He's cleared. So there's a lot going on in the story. And I don't know if it was the concussions or what, but this guy came back a changed person, and not in the best way. It's very, very troubling. I'm very troubled.
Are you referring to the planet's champion, Daniel Bryan?
I mean, I don't want him to come after me, but I'm just saying, there was a person with humbler roots than what I saw. What's been spinning around lately? I don't know.
That Trader Joe's belt is still like one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
I love the Trader Joe's belt. I love that he was like, this is made with like bamboo. Like,
Yeah, and
okay,
hemp. I think
nerd.
it was like a hemp
Yeah,
belt.
hemp. Yeah, it was hemp and bamboo.
I mean, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Some people put a spinner on it, and some people want to make sure that it's biodegradable.
Yeah. He's such an interesting dude. He's a very sympathetic character, and I think because he's small, as you rightfully point out, he was also trained by maybe the greatest small wrestler of all time, which is Shawn Michaels. But there's something to him because he does content. He's married to Brie Bella of the Bella Twins fame of wine and Dancing with Stars and reality show and
they're like the wrestling Kardashians.
Yeah, there you go.
Kardashians of wrestling. And he's done videos with them. We have aired clips of it here where he basically is like, these two twins are dumb as a box of rocks. And I'm going to ask him, I'm going to play, are you smarter than a 5-year-old with them? And they are going to fail. And I'm going to sound like the biggest jerk. So like, I don't know. On the one hand, you feel bad for him. He's great at eliciting sympathy from an audience and being that underdog. But also, I wonder if he also bullied a bigger wrestler on there's this show called Dinner.
Right? Was it Dinner for Three? Yeah. It was Ryback. He's fine.
Yeah. He's just mocks this bigger, like just is making fun of him for 30 minutes straight. The bully. He's the bully. Have you ever had like a smaller kid bully you? I have.
Well, and that's the scariest kind, because then they feel like they're justified. It's the thing we all have to be careful of, which is just because someone picked on you doesn't mean that you now get to pick on people. That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
And you're so used to being like on the defensive that like at a certain point it becomes that you are now on the offensive. And it's also like, look, D-Bry is from Pacific Northwest. He is also a Washington baby, as am I. And our passive aggression is our greatest superpower. Like, look, he does an amazing suplex. Like, don't get me wrong, love a running knee, give me them kicks. But what he really does the best is Pacific Northwest passive aggression.
It's all in the beard. That beard, with
the
every
beard and
inch of that beard grew out, the danger was increasing.
The longer the beard, the closer to God.
That's right.
Danielle, do you have favorite like Daniel Bryan moments?
Well,
Anything
I mean,
you were there for?
Hal, I don't know if I ever talked about this on the podcast before.
Uh-oh.
Oh, really?
I don't think I have. But there was a moment where Daniel Bryan was first starting the Yes movement, and it began in Seattle, Washington during an episode of Raw at Key Arena. And wouldn't you know, it was the one where they were doing the Slammies, and I happened to be there when the entire stadium would not let I won't say stadium, there's a difference, where the entire arena would not allow anyone to talk or do any of their promos. We just chanted for Daniel Bryan the entire night, and that is what they took from a real event and turned that into the Yes movement. Thank you so much for asking, Hal. I never get to talk about it.
It's so amazing. What an amazing thing to share.
For the first time.
Do you have a favorite match of his, of all time? If you were
pressed? Man, I mean, you can't beat WrestleMania 30. You really can't. Just for going 2 matches in one night, killing both of them, the perfect ending to a fantastically told, incredibly emotionally satisfying in a way that a lot of WWE stuff doesn't, or just wrestling in general, for many reasons. Part of it is because people get too injured before a storyline can play out. There's a lot of different moving parts, blah blah blah. This was one where just the fucking, hand me my California Ouija board, the stars aligned, and everything worked out for this everything worked out for this run for it to be perfect. So that WrestleMania 30 is that will always be for me. The things I think of when I think of Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, WrestleMania 30. I think of how worried I get whenever he goes into the middle of a ring with a microphone and a plaid shirt, because I'm afraid it's bad news, because that's what he's taught me. And I remember him trying to figure out how to get gray water to work on his weird Washington home garden. I remember those things. Oh, and I also remember that time when he was yeah, I'm too concussed and they won't let me wrestle again, so I'm gonna do this new bear style. And everyone was what the fuck does that mean? And then he showed us and we were what the fuck does that mean? It's like capoeira with swiping, but you have no claws. You're not a bear, sir. But he is really funny. And what I'm especially happy about right now is that one thing I will say is anytime CM Punk decides to CM Punk all over stuff, who always winds up benefiting or getting put into a better position is Daniel Bryan. And right now, if the talks are true, where now he has taken over that CM Punk role in Collision, where I almost said collusion. That's a different word. That's a legal word.
Conspiracy theories. I like it.
Yeah. But if he is taking over for Collusion, then he's in a fantastic position to do so. And it sounds like he might be thinking about actually winding his career down in a way that is satisfactory for him, and also doesn't make me worry about where wrestlers who were forced to retire because their necks and brains don't work anymore, where y'all getting all the extra neck and brain parts?
Yeah.
Where you getting them? Because you all have them now.
It doesn't send the best message to young people. That you have to take care of yourself because you keep getting hurt and then you come back with vengeance. Because somehow everything's unscrambled now.
And I know it's because they're doing the cryogenic freezy stuff that you would only see in an episode of MTV's True Life. True Life, they injected placenta into my neck and now I have a neck again, or whatever.
Yeah.
That guy who got the big calves on True Life. That would be the kind of, I'd never heard of that, and then I did.
That's where the gray water's going. That gray water's getting injected right into his neck.
Right in his neck. But yeah, so it's good for him, but I'm glad that all of the, a lot of folks are recognizing that it's good to it's better to fade away than to go out with a bang. Fade away. It sounds dope. You have kids.
Yeah. I feel like my takeaway in watching probably way more than I actually needed to for this conversation was just Yes, absolutely. The investment in the moment, the, not being afraid. And I understand that we are talking about wrestling. So, everybody does this to some degree, but just a lot of still waters run deep. Like, I'm going to let this moment of me not saying anything just play out for so incredibly long. And the faith you have to have that the people are going to be there for you on the other side of some of those dramatic pauses is very, very impressive. I also just I feel like his use of like a quivering hand, like he's a prophet, like reaching out, maybe, he's so tired but maybe he can get through this round and maybe God's hand will just come down and touch his quivering hand. Like it's just there's just some big feelings and some big stuff happening there that's coming through in those pauses and those quivers and shudders and still waters run deep.
Oh yeah, he sells like a mofo.
Yeah.
He's one of those people that like when he's selling it, he's into it. I'm like, oh, he dead. Oh, he died.
I have 2 matches to recommend. I'm sure everybody's seen them already. Right now, Janet, there's a storyline that's been going on for 3+ years. I consistently refer to it as the greatest wrestling story ever told. It is fantastic. Every time they find a new twist, it gets better. It's like woven in with all these different people, and now it's reverberating on other shows because one of the members of this group leaves and goes to another show, but everybody there is someone who his group ran over to get there, so now nobody trusts him. And everybody's like, no, I'm never going to trust you for what you did to me. I remember all of that. That is all led by a guy named Roman Reigns.
Okay.
And Roman Reigns, who is a cousin of The Rock, who's like a good-looking, statuesque Samoan dude.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, I've seen some of this. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yes.
He for years, they were like, he's going to be a future star. 2012, they're like, he's going to be a future star. So the second that he was out of a group and on his own, they pushed him there was like an unrelenting push on the audience of Roman Reigns. Of he's a good guy. Look how funny he is. Look how witty he is. Look how powerful he is.
Yeah.
And the crowd couldn't stand him. And I think what that did was obscure how good he was in the ring.
Yep.
But in 2015, he had the world title and he wrestled Daniel Bryan at Fastlane, which is the pay-per-view right before WrestleMania. And it was sort of like we're going to put him in the ring with Daniel Bryan, who is legitimately one of the best professional wrestlers on the earth. He's great at performing. He knows all these different styles to work. And they had a fantastic match. And sometimes that's because of one person sort of carrying the other. But I think that was the start for me of going like, oh, this guy can go. He's actually really good. And now he consistently has incredible matches with great stories behind them. And Daniel Bryan is as you've pointed out, is a gifted storyteller because he figures out all those little things, whether it's quivering hand or the way he sells something.
Different ways to call his wife dumb.
Different ways to
well, at least
it's a bit
when he was complimenting her, at least the first thing he said was that she was beautiful.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily saying someone's dumb.
Yeah.
It's just saying that their looks
so
matter
pretty.
more.
I would have preferred if he would have led with what I always lead with is, there are different kinds of intelligence. There's kinetic intelligence, there's emotional intelligence. Kinetic intelligence, them women have in spades.
Amazing. Oh boy.
The other match I will recommend is from 2018. Daniel Bryan had won the whatever title it was, and he went to Survivor Series to go face to face with the other world champion, who was Brock Lesnar, who is a giant mountain of a guy who runs through people.
Amazing name.
And he's so small.
It's his real name.
And it's his real name. It's his real name too. They didn't even need to do a fake name.
Lesnar.
And
it sounds like an anagram. It sounds like you need to sit down and collude with someone, if you don't mind my saying, to solve that anagram and figure out what the real name is. But go ahead.
Yeah, he's
his real
kind of
name
also
is
like
Ben Rockellis.
Yeah,
See?
he's kind of like a anime villain too, where it's like he literally lives in a mountain on a farm like
Perfect.
Thanos, and just
Yeah.
like hangs out there with his hot wife until someone calls him down from the mountain to fight, and then
There's
he
a
just
special
throws dudes
bugle
around.
they blow. Yeah. Great. Great,
He
great,
rides
great.
down on a gigantic goat.
Uh-huh.
He has to like take off his cowboy hat and like replace it with like his Jimmy John branded fight shorts and like go to work with his wife before he goes to
Yeah.
work at the concussion factory.
Where he basically gives people concussions. The two of them had never wrestled before, and he Brock Lesnar ragdolls people around the ring. He doesn't matter what their size is, he will pick them up and toss them around, which he did to Daniel Bryan. And immediately you're like, this is going to be a squash. He's just going to toss him around, and Daniel Bryan looks like he's nearly dead, and it like happened right away. And then all of a sudden he like reverses it, and you find out, oh, he's been playing possum this whole time.
Mm-hmm. He can
Brock
get thrown
Lesnar,
around. Yeah.
He made him wear himself out, and now it's going to be an even fight. And it's so smart. Like those little storytelling things are what I love so much. And it's just a really well told story of a match, and it's worth revisiting if you haven't seen it, or watching if you've never seen it.
It's one of those things I've always wanted from a Brock Lesnar match, because they'll have these matches where he's throwing people around. I'm like, okay, well, that's like interesting, but like, wouldn't like a David versus Goliath be like a little bit more interesting? And it's like, that is what that match gave. That match gave David versus Goliath. Like, I am going to use like because Brock Lesnar is just all power. He doesn't have to be wily. He doesn't have to do any of that stuff. I'll just pick you up and chuck you across the ring. And so to have someone who is then using like their intelligence to like fight against him the way that, much the way he practiced by fighting against his wife. Sorry, I know that it's a bit that they all did, but it's never going to be one of those things where I'm not like, I'm going to make fun of you for this forever. You literally were like, the bit is called Bella Brains, and it's about how your wife and her twin sister are the dumbest people you ever met. I'm gonna make fun of you for the rest of time.
I think you need to. I think that's required.
It's gonna happen.
You got to take that bullet. Yeah.
They're not traditionally book smart. I mean, I will say that for the bit, like if the bit is to prove that they lack some fundamental knowledge that we all picked up in our first 10 years of school, he is successful. But
it's not because
and that's what makes a great marriage.
Yes. Well, and unfortunately, the thing is that like everyone is like, oh, because they're hot, they're dumb. And it's like, no, they're not. Like, they're not dumb. And it's not because they're hot. It's because they've been athletes. Like they used to play like they've been athletes their entire life. Like the hot is incidental. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They just like all of that intelligence went to like kinetic. It all went to like athletics. Like there's different kinds of being able to like see, the ball. I can't do that shit.
Yeah. We can't blame people for what course we set them on, and then we question why they don't have certain information.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a bad look, like if Jennifer and I came over and like we had dinner, and then you were like, all right, this is gonna be really fun. Brandon, I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions right now out of this Dr. Seuss book or whatever. And you can't answer them. You're like, isn't this hilarious? Look how dumb he is.
Yeah. It's not for me. I agree. Yeah. That's not for me.
It's very weird, especially for a guy like this was when he was actively a good guy.
Yeah.
And they're putting this out there.
Yeah, that's a weird brand crunch of like, wait.
To be fair, on the opposite end, because this is when they were doing Tota Bellas, was John Cena being a villain on like his girlfriend's reality show, where he would be like, you're all staying in my house. Thank you for getting past the moat. We will all dine in the dining area at 6 p.m. And then men will go to the cigar room, and we will adjourn there, and women will go wherever women go. This is a real thing, by the way. John Cena, I mean, all of that stuff is like, it's a different kind of like acting, like that reality show version, but he was definitely having fun playing the villain. And so I think that's what they're like, oh, we can get away with you saying your wife is dumb because like you never kicked her out for wearing shoes on your like marble kitchen or whatever.
No. Isn't there a difference though between I'm gonna make you look real dumb and I'm gonna make you sign a contract if you want to move in? That's a real thing also from the show. It's like, oh, you want to move in together? Because she desperately.
Well, that's a cohabitation agreement. That's one thing I do. That's one paralegal thing I do know. So I can make an argument for that, but not the way he did it. That was shitty.
No, yeah, like there's just a different. Like one is like he's got a stick up his butt. The other is, I think he hates his wife.
Yeah, he's a genuinely
Like, why did you-
unhappy, angry person.
Like,
to
why did
his
you
wife.
marry her? Why
Yeah,
did you
is this-
marry her?
Yeah.
Welcome to the new series Buyer's Remorse, where I talk
Yeah.
about this marriage I got into that maybe
Yeah.
And I know like they think it's funny. So for them, it's like, oh, it's like a funny like inside joke. And it's like, I am not on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like it's like the Dolly Parton thing, right? Where like Dolly can sit there and like listen to someone insinuate that she's stupid or that her boobs are too big or whatever, and she'll play along. But like, there's never a question in your mind that she absolutely is smarter and can run circles around the person who's making fun of her. And that's part of the meta conversation, is that you're like,
Yes.
I don't have to worry about Dolly. She's fine.
Dolly got
But
Dolly.
like, yeah,
Dolly
but
has
like,
all of us.
you know
if
what I
we're being
mean?
real.
But like, when you don't have that feeling underneath, you don't have that foundation underneath, then you're like, I don't know, is this funny? Like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
So
And I love him. And I know that it's also like there was a different kind of that weird style of comedy, really like for that 2000s where it was super bro-y and like that's what was funny. Like in the wrestling world, it extended well past its expiration date too. So I try to like give credit for that, but it's also like not for me.
Yeah.
I do love Daniel Bryan though. And I know that like some things are like, you got your paycheck. Like I get it. You can't just talk all day about how awesome Aberdeen is. I get it.
yeah.
Well, we asked the members of the Nation of Conversation for their thoughts and memories of Daniel Bryan. Here's what they said. Pedro on Facebook said, I had the privilege of seeing him live at the first AEW Grand Slam, and he's even better in person. The rest of the show was good, but by God, that match with him and Kenny Omega was a work of art. Then we have Da Mullet on Blue Sky.
Shout out to the mullet.
Da
The only mullet? Are there more mullets? I want to meet the whole mullet family.
But when are we having the mullets over for dinner?
The
I've got
Boston
quiz-
mullets?
Yeah, I've got the quiz cards ready.
Well, first we have to have a meeting with them, and then we'll have a party afterwards.
This is what Da Mullet said. The granola belt was the perfect way to convince even the diehard WWE fan base to boo a man who had been the perfect babyface to that point. Yes,
All we had to do was
that.
remind them of recycling.
Famously vegan. Famously
How
vegan.
dare he?
And that group, they're all eating hot dogs like, you're not better than me. Matthew Birdsey on Twitter said, so much respect and love of ring work. I want nothing but health and happiness for the American Dragon.
True story.
American Dragon, that's right.
Stay part of the conversation with Tights and Fights on all of our social media channels, including Blue Sky, where you can hang out with Da Mullet. Most of us are there too, but Da Mullet is why you're showing up. We know that. Links are in the show notes. When we come back, even more Bryan Danielson. That's up next on Tights and Fights.